this week in Palo Alto, graduating seniors at Paly and Gunn High School celebrated their final moment of high school. The graduation ceremony is on Wednesday night, so we thought it would be really apt to bring in two seniors and also two rising seniors to talk about issues going on at the high schools, reflect on their time, the past 4 years for the seniors, and do some looking forward. And one thing that all these 4 students have in common is they are all either the most recent or new student school board reps from each Paly and Gunn. So they sit on the school board. Emma Cole and Grace Park from Gunn and Paly were on the school board this year. And David Tayeri and Ankit Ranjan are Paly and Gunn's for next year. Grace, I thought we would start with you. You were one of the graduation speakers on Wednesday night at Gunn. And you had a really powerful speech that started with this really simple question: how are you really? And I think that really embodied sort of a lot of what's been going on in the high schools the past few years. And this question, and getting to the root of how are people doing, vulnerability, instead of just giving that automatic response of I'm good. Could you talk a little bit about that message and why you chose to write about that?
I think the process was that as a freshman, when I was asked, how are you, it was really just a quick, oh, I'm good. I've also got to go to class, and I'm running across the quad with my backpack on, trying to get to class on time. And as I got closer and closer to my friends over the next 4 years, and I realized how much I could trust them and how they were there for me, I was able to answer that question with more and more honesty. So by the time I sat down to write my graduation speech at the end of my senior year, I realized what I wanted to do was give a tribute to that aspect of friendship and that aspect of caring for the people around you, not just in the, oh, how are you, like, you good, okay, cool, and moving on, but how are you and how are you really, and really pushing people to trust other people in a way that's not easy to do when you're just first meeting them. I think it was a tribute to how close-knit our community has become and how close-knit my class has become over the past 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Ankit, were you at graduation?
I actually was not.
Oh, you were not?
Couldn't make
I was going to ask if that resonated with you. That's all right.
Unfortunately.
But just hearing about that right now, does that question and sort of the meaning behind it resonate with the rest of you?
I can understand where she's coming from, for sure. That question is definitely an important one, and how are you is a question that has many layers of meaning. It's a common greeting, and many times when somebody asks you that, they don't actually really care about how you're doing. They really don't want to hear all the troubles that are going on in your life. But I feel, especially in my school, and I can relate with what Grace is saying, that as you get closer to your friends and the people in your school, you learn that sometimes it's really important to be honest about that question and not pass it off with a perfunctory glance and just say, all right, I'm doing good, but actually open up and explain how you're feeling and also learn about how others are feeling.
Mm-hmm. It also obviously touches on issues of stigma around seeking help and opening up, topics that have been of great interest over the past few years, especially in the wake of several student deaths by suicide. Have you seen a shift in the way your classmates talk about mental health, are willing to seek help, understanding mental health? How has that been playing out at your schools the past few years?
I do feel like I have felt a shift. I mean, it's not drastic. I think there's definitely still stigma surrounding seeking help and issues surrounding the suicides, but I do sense a shift, and I do sense that students are now more open, more willing to talk about their problems, more open about their problems, and willing to really say how they are, how they're feeling, and how they're doing. And I wouldn't say it's everybody, but I do feel, I mean, do you guys agree with me? I feel like that we are moving in the right direction. We're not there, but we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's definitely more talk about how important mental health is, which is a good start. As far as important conversations happening between students and adults that can help, or honest conversations between students and their friends, I'd like to hope that that's improving, but in my experience, I think it's more of the same, unfortunately. Will change come as long as people are talking about how important mental health is? Yeah, I hope so. But as of now, like I think change is actually slow.
Yeah, it takes time.
I think I've noticed a shift in the way my friends ask the question. I think now there's more of a tone that they're taking responsibility for their friends' safety and well-being as well. And so when they ask the question, there's always a follow-up. So I think if there's a shift, that's sort of where I've seen it, where students feel like they want to make sure that they're the one that's there for their friend. So there's more of a sense of responsibility.
Adding on that, actually, I think that there's, well, that's positive. I think that there's a negative aspect to that, which is that people, it's much harder to say you're not feeling well because people are like, they're aware that there can be fatal consequences to not feeling well. And now when somebody asks you and say, hey, I'm having a bad day, that now carries many more layers of meaning than it used to. And now it's much harder because there's help for when you're feeling really, really bad. But when you're just feeling bad, it's much harder to actually get support. And I do feel that people feel closer to the normal than they feel to the extremes more often. And I think also there's the other thing that you don't want to be the downer or too much of a burden on your friends, especially when it's very serious. Yeah. You're aware that if you say you're feeling bad, then the conversation will immediately shift to trying to help you. But for many people, you don't want that type of attention necessarily. You just want to say it and let it be, instead of have it be the most important thing.
Right. I know that seeking help at the schools and actually having those counselors be there, and available to help students has also been an issue. And with the counselors just being really overwhelmed by the demand, what is either if you're willing to share a personal experience or just other students' experience been with when they do choose to seek help from one of the on-campus counselors or psychologists? Are they able to get it within a timely manner? Are they satisfied with the help they receive on campus?
Well, I think mostly it's a matter of not knowing where to go or who to talk to. There's school psychologists, there's ACS, there's the guidance office and the college counselors. And so I feel like if you have a problem, it's really hard to know who to talk to or who to go to or how to get an appointment or all of these things. And I know that what happens a lot of the time is that a student will go to one person and they'll reference them to another person who will reference them to another person. And, that's kind of the opposite of what you want.
Yeah, I'm sure that's discouraging.
Yeah, it's hard to go and seek help. So when you're not immediately met back with help or some sort of support, discouraging is exactly the right word. But that's why we talked a lot about the mental health centers in a previous board meeting, and that, that's sort of one of the things we're looking to do to fix that problem, sort of centralize the location of all of the...
Right, and Gunn is actually building a physical new building, wellness center that's supposed to house all of those services that you mentioned and put them in one place. And I think Paly is looking at creating some sort of similar model, though they won't have a very new building to house it in.
Yeah. But even without the physical structure, I think having someone who's able to coordinate all of that stuff would serve essentially the same purpose of coordinating and making sure that when a student actually needs help and goes to them, they're not bounced around as much as they are, because if it's hard opening up once, it's infinitely harder opening up multiple times.
Yeah.
There's one thing that I think is very important about when we're building these centers and we're trying to increase the outreach is that I think the biggest problem actually is students, when somebody is feeling distressed, it's really hard for them to open up to a stranger. And there's a huge latency. There are studies around this that people will tell, if they're feeling distressed or showing signs of depression, they'll tell their friends way, way, way before they actually get professional or adult help. And that's very problematic. In fact, if you go, I know personally, and I know many of my friends, what happens is you're aware of the feelings of a lot of your friends, but you don't know how to get them help because you don't want to betray their trust. Usually they tell you these things in confidence. Yeah. And but you also are aware of how things can turn south very quickly, and you want to get them help. And you're aware of concepts like mandated reporting. You don't know what that entails. You don't really know your counselor that well because all of your interactions have really been just for schedule changing and getting the right classes. And now ACS, that's a whole other story because you've never been in there. You're aware that it's supposed to be counseling, but you don't know like exactly who's in there. You don't know how it's run.
Change so often.
And the counselors they're on a rotating basis. It's actually, I have friends who've gone through ACS and it's been terrible because the moment they build rapport with a counselor there, that counselor's out and there's a new one in. Honestly speaking, I've talked with many of my friends and I've not heard anyone saying they had a great experience at ACS. I've heard some people saying that it was passable, but most of all I've heard people saying that it didn't work.
The school board and the adults in the community talk a lot about the importance of you guys having a trusted adult on campus, which I think sometimes when they talk about this, it feels really far away from what that actually means to you guys. But it is important, like you're saying, that there is, whether it's a teacher or a coach or whoever it is, someone that you feel comfortable going to for advice, whether it's about yourself or about a friend, and feeling comfortable that they can help you and that they're not going to also betray your own confidence. And unless someone's in a danger to themselves or others.
I think something that would really help is if there was some way to, I guess not train, but provide support for the trusted adults and the trusted friends in people's lives. Because I know the hardest part of being one of those trusted adults or like trusted friends is that you're not sure if you're doing the right thing, if you're helping your friend in the best way possible. So if there was some way to, I think QPR was something that we taught in Living Skills, but some way to expand that program or focus more on the YES program. If there was some way to teach students and adults how to provide that support and know that they really are providing the best support that they can, that would be really helpful.
And QPR is it's a suicide prevention
Yes.
training program, and I know that. People have talked about Living Skills as needing to be a place for more serious education and not sort of a check off the list kind of class. And that's a great idea for something to incorporate into it.
Yeah, I think one of the problems with ACS definitely is it puts the agency on the troubled student to go seek help, which is one thing that I think is really good about Paly's TA system. Is these are teacher advisors that really get to know their students and the people in their advisory class. And they can tell when a lot of the time when a student is having a rough time. And so they then make an appointment with the student and talk to the student or say like, hey, can I talk to you for a little bit after class? Which I think is really, really important because it shows the student not only does someone care, it's someone that they see every day and it's someone that can tell that something's wrong with them. So I can't count how many times like one of my friend's teacher advisors had talked to them, met them at lunch, just to check on them and see what's going on, which is, I think, really great.
Well, you read my mind because I was going to ask about what you and Emma thought were the best elements of the teacher advisory counseling model at Paly. The school district has thrown around considering that model for Gunn, and also for Ankit and Grace, if you have any thoughts on your counseling experience and them having a different model at Gunn.
Well, I will say that what David said is very true, but on another level, the reason I appreciate the TA system so much is more for college, actually, because it's really important to get the guidance counselor, teacher advisor, letter of recommendation, and your teacher advisor knows you so well because you spend so much time with them in such a small classroom setting, and so that allows them to know when maybe you're feeling a bit down and can come talk to you, and it also allows them to write you a really stellar letter of recommendation because they know you so well and so personally. I honestly don't see a downside to the TA system. I think sometimes advisory feels a bit rushed or a bit like sometimes students don't want to go to advisory. If we're being honest, it's not always exciting. So I do think there's a little bit of
How to make the best use of
I think there could be better use of some of the advisory time, but the TA system in general is, I can't complain about it at all.
I just think, the thing about like mandated advisory meetings is that like sometimes you have to go and you don't really have anything to, talk to your TA about, which is why the most hopeful thing about having a TA is that you can basically drop in and see them anytime. That's the best part, really.
I was curious, actually, how well do you think the matching is for TAs to students? Do you think students generally get TAs who are a good fit for them?
As I told you before, until a few years ago, students chose their TAs. But there was a problem with that system. So we have like, the survey, and they match you with a TA. I was the first class that has done that.
So what's the survey like?
It's questions about like your personality, essentially.
Interesting. Okay.
Your plans for after high school. Honestly, the consensus among most of my class was that they just had you fill out the survey and they randomly assigned you. But I can't complain at all about my TA. I love my TA, Mr. Lim. He's great. All the faculty all the TAs at Paly are great. I don't think a single one of my friends or anyone I know has a problem with their TA. They all care about their students deeply, and because there's so few students in an advisory class, they don't never feel overwhelmed, I don't think. Mm-hmm. They get to know all their students really well, so I think the system is fine as it is.
Yeah, that's what I would say, is just that, like, if the TAs choose to be TAs, not every teacher is a TA, and so they all want to be there. They all want to be there for their students and be good TAs. So I don't think it really matters who your TA is or if you have anything in common with them, because they're there to support you regardless of who they are or what their interests are.
That was an important thing actually about TAs opting in. Because there's nothing worse than having a teacher who doesn't want to be doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's talk about a topic I know is near and dear to all of your hearts, student voice. This became, sometimes contentious issue over the past few years. Students, the zero period decision at Gunn High School to cancel that early morning period, I think really ignited a lot of student activism around that and really wanting to be heard. And given a true sort of seat at the table on these issues that impacted your day-to-day life so directly. We can talk about zero period specifically, or just more in general, reflecting now that we're a year away from that and ending at this school year. Do you feel like students have been given more of a true voice and a true seat at the table in important decisions across the district? How do you view student voice where it stands today?
I would say the problem really is it's rooted in that students are feel like they're living in a world where the board makes decisions and then they have to deal with the decisions.
Yeah.
And what happens is the board will make a decision that students don't like and they react to it rather than actively taking a part in making the decision, which a lot of them feel like they don't have a place in, they don't have a part of it. So I think that starts with students attending board meetings, first of all, very important.
There have been many at a lot of board meetings this year. Over the last year, there's been more, I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's just students need to realize that they're not so separated from the board as they think they are, and they can have a part of these decisions. They need to find out what's on the ballot, and if they can get out there and try to influence the decisions, then they'll be less angry reacting and more helping to form the decisions.
I think a lot of Gunn students have realized that just over the past 2 years, understanding what kind of an impact the board has on students and their day-to-day lives and their schedules, their college opportunities as well, just all of these decisions that the board has made. And I think because of that, I've seen a lot more student outreach toward, being the site council and the school board rep last year, I saw a lot more students coming up to me to tell me what they thought and to remind me that, they really wanted me to talk about this particular aspect of it, or they saw this as being a problem with a board decision and they wanted me to bring it up at a meeting. And so I've been a rep for 4 years, and I think my freshman and sophomore year, it was much more just take the school's temperature and then just use that in my reports. But then as I became a junior and a senior, I saw a lot more of students actively reaching out to me to tell me what they thought was important. So perhaps not a direct shift at the board or the administrative level, but more of a shift in the way students are looking at those two entities and understanding that at this point we can't just react, we have to take a more active part in speaking up.
And Ankit, you've brought a proposal to the school board, which seems to be moving forward pretty quickly, to get you and David next year preferential votes as board reps. Could you talk a little bit about that proposal and how it came about?
So that proposal came about because I was basically just reading through the bylaws and I wanted to get an understanding of how it worked, and I was looking in the education code and I saw that there was a mechanism by which, the same mechanism by which any district in the country can get a student representative on the board. That district can get that student representative a preferential vote. Now, preferential vote isn't actually counted in the vote count, so 2 preferential votes and 2 normal votes against 3 normal votes still lose. Well, it goes to the 3 normal votes, but what it does do is make an unequivocal stance on any issue. So one thing that I do feel is that when a student representative says something, everyone agrees with it, but everyone interprets it differently.
Yeah.
And this makes it very clear what a stance is. I also think that it's definitely, because the votes are recorded in the minutes, it brings students closer to the decision-making process. I also think that, so there are these hard things that we can, concrete things that we can do to increase student voice. I think that another thing I'm going to be trying to do next year is what Grace is talking about, also flipping that a bit and trying to reach out to the students and make it clear to them when it might be something that they would be interested in. And I think Grace and Emma have done a great job of this year, and I really want to focus on continuing that next year, which is when an issue comes up which is actually important to the students at a direct level. Of course, all the issues are important, but ones that are directly affecting the students and the students would care about, that needs to be brought to the students as soon as possible. And even if it's being just discussed, it's worth bringing it to the students and having anybody who's interested, giving them the opportunity to enter in early and help influence the decision-making process. Because many times we kind of enter in as the decision's going through at the action item stage,
Right.
even though there'll have been 2 or 3 discussions beforehand.
Yeah, and a great way to do that is utilize our great publications. I know that Campanile that I read on, we're going to have, we're going to have a school board correspondent for next
Oh,
year.
really? That's great.
Much like Voice already has, or actually Paly Voice, they usually have someone sitting in meetings, or 1 or 2. Once we can have a lot of representation from student journalism at meetings, they can publish stories, online stories preferably, because you can reach a lot of stories online, students online. That's a great way to spread awareness about ballot measures and decisions that, might really make a lot of students feel a certain way.
Yeah, absolutely. Grace and Emma, looking back on your past year on the board, do you have any advice for the new 2 reps?
You want to go first?
I have to think about it.
Okay. I think mine would be always focus on the constructives. You're going to get a tidal wave of student opinions and student emotions and student reactions. And I think what I've realized over the past year is your jobs next year is going to be finding some way to take that reaction and turn it into a very concrete set of suggestions for the board, and sort of translate the student reaction into policy. So I think that's sometimes going to be, that will be the hardest part of your job, being able to coordinate within the students and also negotiate that with the admin and the board who make the actual policy decisions. And that's my piece of advice. Always focus on the constructive perspective. But I think you guys are going to do a great job, and you're already off to it, so I wouldn't worry.
I guess I would say I understand both of you are interested in having better communication with the students at Gunn and Paly about what the board is doing, and I would say to definitely make sure that advertisement or that I'm not sure what to call it, but if you want students at the meeting, make sure it's coming from you, because I remember last year there would be issues that affected the students, and I don't know why, but I do feel like some of the students feel like the board has it out against the students, which of course is not the case at all, but things would be said like, oh, the board is trying to take away this and that, where of course that's not what's really happening. So if you feel that an issue is going to affect students, I would say make sure that call for help or support is coming from you, the person who knows what's really going to be talked about, and utilize things like social media, putting it out on Facebook and Twitter, that's how you reach. I mean, that's how you reach the most kids in this day and age. I mean, really, it's impossible to tell everybody to come to a board meeting. But if you go
You should
on,
make a Snapchat and put it on the Snapchat
yeah,
stories.
There you go.
if you put it on your Snapchat story,
Reach them where they are.
yeah. So that's what I would say.
Great. Well, unless you guys have any lingering thoughts, I think we'll wrap it up. Thank you so much for being here. Do you have something you want to
No,
chip in
yeah,
on?
no, it's
Okay. Well, congratulations to Emma and Grace on graduating. Wish you the best of luck in your future, and hope you come back to visit at school board meetings. And you can always check us out for breaking news on paloaltoonline.com, on Twitter and Facebook.